Hey, good people. Today, we are going to be talking about client empowerment as a helping professional. When we talk about client empowerment, it is very important that we have a clear understanding of what exactly that means. When we're looking at client empowerment, we are moving in a direction as a professional and looking at becoming a collaborative partner with our client, consumer, or patient. This means that our client, consumer, or patient is going to be taking an active role in the helping process, in reaching the goals that they identify, the action steps that we may lay forth with them, but they will be participating in an active basis in order to be successful in the helping process. Now, as we go through this whole chapter and talking about client empowerment, we're going to be looking at this as we have the entire semester, looking at this from a generalist perspective, meaning that the information that we're going to cover in this chapter is information that can be used to work with any population, whether it's children and youth, families, individual, group, or the elderly. So from a generalist approach, when we're talking about empowerment in the helping profession, we have to have an understanding that from this idea of empowerment, we have to, again, looking at the whole person, learn how to integrate everything that our client, consumer, or patient may be speaking with us about, and looking at assessing it, how is that going to impact them in this helping process? So our textbook then refers to us, or refers us to, this whole concept of there being three phases in this empowerment process. We look at the dialogue or the engagement phase, the discovery phase, and then the development phase, development and or implementation phase. So let's start with our engagement, or our dialogue phase, excuse me, as I get a little tongue tied. When we talk about the dialogue phase is just that. We are establishing relationship boundaries and our roles in the helping profession. When we're talking about working, or I should say, being in this dialogue phase, the engagement phase, there's some things we have to be mindful of. We need to take a look at, how did this client, consumer, or patient, how did they come to us? How did they begin wanting to work with us? Are they here on a voluntary basis, or are they court mandated or involuntarily committed to being our client? When we consider how they came to us, of course, if folks are coming to you on a voluntary basis, it's going to make the relationship a little bit easier to form, because there is a desire to seek assistance. If they're coming to you on an involuntary basis, the desire may not necessarily show up in the initial phase. There may be some hesitation. There may be some resentment. These are things, again, that we have to be mindful of when we're thinking about the nature of the relationship, how this is getting started. When we're forming our relationship, we want to make sure that we're also looking at things from a very interpersonal perspective. Now, our clients don't care a whole lot about the alphabet soup behind our name, but they do care about these three issues that you see here on our screen. When we talk about empathy, when we're looking at empathy, oh, I apologize. When we look at empathy, we are looking at having at least the respect for what our client may be experiencing. Being able to say, I'm able to get an understanding or respect from your perspective on this issue. We have to be mindful about using the word understanding, because unless we are there, the same time, same situation, same feelings, we may not have a clear understanding of what our client is going through. But to say that we have empathy, I have a genuine concern, I have respect for, and I want to have gain a deeper meaning of what it is you, the client, consumer, patient, may be experiencing, and what brought you here for this issue. Our genuineness and being authentic. Come on, good people. We all know that folks can see someone who is shady coming a mile away. At least I hope you can. Uh, when we talk about being genuine and being authentic, be who you are. Be your true self. Don't try to present yourself as someone who you are not, or someone that you're striving to be. Just be your genuine self. Positive regard. that positive regard, meaning that there is a respect for the differences that I may have, my opinion, my perspective versus what you, the client, consumer, or patient may have. That's what positive regard means. So when we're talking about, again, being in this place where we are engaging, we're trying to set up or establish a relationship. This is what our client is looking for. They want to know, do we care? They want to know, are we going to try to be respectful? They want to know, are they at least acknowledging, or we, I should say, are we the worker acknowledging that their thoughts are not the same as our thoughts? So we have to kind of get there again as we're establishing the relationship. As we continue to go on talking about establishing the relationship, we want to make sure that we are getting the full picture of what our client, consumer, or patient may be talking about. And so this is where we are when we talk about articulating situations. This is where when the rubber meets the road and we begin to look at engaging in conversation and the types of questions that we ask. We want to make sure that we are presenting a clear, unbiased opportunity for our client, consumer, or patient to tell their story, tell all aspects of their story, all of the facts, all of the relevant information that we need to know, so that we can kind of get to a place where we can begin to define positions, and we can begin to have some clarity in the purpose and the goal, have an idea of what this client, consumer, patient may be in need of. When we talk about this engagement, this dialogue process, again, you see down here on your screen when we're looking at identifying the situation, we have to look at what is our client, consumer, patient experiencing that may be life-threatening at this time, or that could be detrimental for their health and well-being at this time. So again, we need to encourage our client, consumer, patient to tell their whole story. And this is where we got to kind of have to refrain from uh, 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 cutting them off, wanting to fill in the blank for them. This is the time that we just sit back, let our lips rest, let our ears work, and allow the client to tell their truth. And if there are questions towards the end, then yes, we have that opportunity to ask for clarification as we get to the place of it's our time to talk now. And that's when we finish up with this dialogue phase. When we get into the assessment phase, this is where things start to get a little bit interesting. When we're talking about the assessment phase, this is where we begin to identify for our client, consumer, or patient what their strengths may be. Again, being mindful when we're back here in the engagement phase, here we let them tell their story. We let them talk about what they need to talk about, their hurts, their angst, the issues that are bringing them here. But in this assessment phase, the discovery phase, I want to tap into what your strengths are, client, consumer, or patient. I want to know, what resources do you have available for you? And not just resources meaning financial things, not just resources meaning different agencies or organizations that you go to, but I want to know about your support system as well. So again, this is where we get to the place where we're encouraging the client to, again, think about what they're thinking about. Think about the good parts, the good things that you bring, the good qualities that you bring. Think about your support system. Think about anything that is available and accessible to you that would assist you in becoming successful and getting over or achieving your goals, and getting over this barrier, this hurdle that may be presenting itself before you. When we talk about this assessment phase, this is where, again, we begin to talk with our client, consumer, or patient about maybe we need to consider some goals, setting some goals for ourselves. But before we begin talking about the goals, let me go one more. Before we begin talking about the goals, we want to make sure, again, that we have a clear understanding of what's going on with the whole person. So when we're in this section, where we're talking about the social study, the social study is not social studies from high school, good people. But the social study is where we're looking specifically at our client, consumer, and patient and some very specific issues. We're looking at the micro, the macro, and the meso level of what this client, consumer, or patient is bringing to us. Now, this information isn't in your textbook, in this textbook, but you'll get it in later later, oh golly, later courses. I'm sorry, had a brain blast for a minute. But when we talk about the micro level, I'm looking at client, consumer, patient. What's going on for you right now? What do you have to bring to the table that's going to be of assistance to you in reaching your goals? So the micro is all about the client. When we talk about the meso is this second layer. The meso is going to be, again, our support system. It's going to be our circle of trust. It's going to include not just family and friends, but it also may include some civic organizations that we belong to. Maybe it includes the PTO at my child's school. Maybe it is a faith-based group that I meet with. Maybe this is I volunteer at a local food pantry or something. That's your meso layer. Then the macro is always going to be what do you have like culturally as a whole? What are you holding on to, and what is society able to provide for you that's going to assist you in reaching your goal? So that's what the social study aspect is. Again, not talking about that class in high school that we all used to try to skip. Ooh. But we're talking about, again, the micro, the meso, and the macro perspective of our client. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit more about that when we get actually a little bit further down on this slide. When we're trying to gather all this information together, one of the tools that we use in the helping profession is called an echo map. We use an echo map to demonstrate, again, this whole idea of what resources does a client, consumer, or patient have that they can tap into. And the way that we use an echo map, we use some of the symbols coming from a genogram. I am going to have in your folder, again, an example sheet of a genogram so you can see the different symbols and you can see the different lines and what the meanings of the lines are. An echo map, if you, when you're in your textbook, there's a great picture of two different types of an echo map and a genogram. So please make sure that you become familiar with these, because that's going to be part of your assignment this week, is to create an echo map from a case study that I give you. So when we're talking about an echo map, we're looking at the client being in the center, and then everything that goes on around this client that is going to impact their healing process. What's going to help them get from this place of being hurt, injured, in need of, to the place of resolution. All right. So as we're talking about the assessment and we're gathering more information, we have to have this understanding, okay, that there is definitely a purpose to everything that's going on for our client. We need to consider not just what our client is talking about, but other issues that may influence or that may factor into what's going to help them reach their goal. So again, this is where it's important to be knowledgeable of multicultural issues, because we may be working with someone who maybe they have a strong religious entity for themselves. They rely heavily on religion. Well, it may be good. You may not be a religious person, but it would be good to be knowledgeable of the resources available in your community that may offer some type of faith-based services for this client. So that's what I mean when we talk about multicultural issues. Finally, when we talk about getting to this place of assessment, we have to know how to bring it all together, good people. All right, so this is where we begin to make a goal plan or a treatment plan for our client, consumer, or patient. When we talk about making goals, our goals are something that is very specific and it is very achievable by this client. The goal is not going to be something that you want the client to do, but the goal is going to be something that the client proclaims for themselves is doable, something that they can do. So as we write out our goals are always written with action steps or objectives. When we write our goals, when we write our objectives or action steps, they're always with a verb. The client will, da 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 da. The client to join, da 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 da. The client to research, the client to contact. There's always going to be an action that has to take place, either in the objective / action step or with the goal. Now with the objectives, this is where it gets a little bit tricky, good folks. The objectives are always laid out. They're little mini action steps. So it's like little mini goals, that's going to help your client to recognize that, okay, this is the big goal. The big goal is graduating with my bachelor's degree in fill in the blank. But the mini goal for me to start right now is I just got to apply to a college. That's the mini goal. So the action step is going to be maybe you, the worker, an action step that you're responsible for is provide the client with a list of colleges or universities in their area. That's your achievable action step. Now your client, their achievable action step or objective is going to be contact these colleges and universities for applications. So I hope that makes sense, good people. When we're talking about, again, getting to the place where we're forming and framing solutions, we're putting this all down on paper. It's time for the rubber to meet the road. So we have a treatment plan or an action plan that has very specific achievable goals for a client, consumer, patient, and action steps. So finally, when we're talking about this last part of the assessment phase and getting our clients to the place where they are acting on their achieve or their goal, their action plan, their treatment plan, this is where we have to see, or where we can see where empowerment begins to take place, or begins to take shape for a client, consumer, or patient. See, because they came to you in need of something, lacking something, wanting something, injured, hurt. And your job has been to let me talk with you through the process and prepare you to be responsible and accountable for the work that you do. So this treatment plan, this action plan, whatever the terminology may be, this is setting your client up to begin to see how they can be successful in the little things that's going to begin to sow the seed of empowerment. And I hope that makes sense, good people. It's going to begin to help this client identify what their strengths may be, what their weaknesses may be. Going to help them identify the support systems that may be there. What supports were in place? What do I have to work on? What do I need to build on for myself, me being the client, consumer, patient, so that I feel more confident and comfortable doing what I need to do? This whole thing with our action step and our goal, our treatment plan, is all about building awareness for our client, consumer, or patient. All right. So now we get to the good part. We get to implementation or the development stage. This is where, when we're at this place where we begin to see some activity going on with our client, consumer, or patient. This is where our client, consumer, patient begins to act on all the information that you have sat down and you've talked with them about in that dialogue phase and in that assessment phase. We've talked the talk, now it's time to walk the walk. When we're in this place of implementation, this is where, again, I need you to be mindful that this is not about you, the worker. This is all about the client. You, the worker, your job now is to be that emotional support. You are the cheerleader in the background. This phase right now is all about this client building on their strengths, their weaknesses, and making sure that they have this opportunity to expand upon what they already may have had. So here in this implementation phase, this is where we see the client stepping out of that micro level where it's just all about me, then I'm going into this meso level. I got to look at my support systems around me. I got to look at what's going on in my circle of trust and how can I maneuver the circle of trust, not so much to manipulate them, but to put them in place that I can use them to reach my goal. How can I maneuver around some of the cultural issues, social issues, again, not to manipulate the system, but so that I can reach my goal. So all of this is implementation. It's all about engagement for our client, consumer, or patient. It's all about our client being engaged, our client being connected, our client being in this place where they feel like, okay, hey, I'm making my way up Maslow's hierarchy of need. Maslow's hierarchy of need demonstrates for me that there's 4 areas where they're called deficient needs. But then that last one at the top is called a being need, self-actualization. When we're talking about this part here of implementation, this is where our client, consumer, patient begins to recognize, hey, I can do what I need to do and be successful. As they continue to work through the treatment plan or the goal sheet that you created for them, this is where we get the opportunity to evaluate the work that's being done. See, because you always got to go back and check yourself. You have to go back and check your work to make sure, well, did we miss something? Did the client miss something? I want you to always be mindful that you have to evaluate the work that was done so that, hey, if I missed something, I can fill it in. If something could be done differently, maybe on the next go around with a different client, then I have that information at hand as well. So when we talk about evaluating the process, this is where, again, we look at the progress evaluation, the outcome assessments, and program evaluation across all boards. The progress evaluation, this is what we do with our clients, consumers, or patients as they go throughout the progress of meeting their little action steps. Each action step has a finish date and it's accomplished by what date. So we got it done. The outcome assessment. This is what we're doing where we are measuring our clients' goals and how well they achieve them. What kind of change was sparked by the outcome that the client made? If one of the goals was to gain full-time employment, then the outcome would be not only full-time employment, but also permanent housing or stable housing or something. So we have something that is measurable that we're looking at. Now, program evaluation. Program evaluation is all about the program within the agency or organization and the overall effectiveness of the services being provided by that program. Usually when we talk about program assessments or program evaluations, that's done depending on the agency or organization, either on a quarterly or an annual basis, reviewing the work that was done by the workers, the outcome of the clients, consumers, or patients, and what kind of changes may need to be implemented within the program itself so we can make sure everybody stays successful. The last part when we talk about implementation, when we look at implementation, we always want to make sure that we are putting ourselves in a place that as we are gaining information on not just our clients, consumers, or patients, but also on our programs and therefore our agencies or organizations, we want to make sure that we are always being mindful of the types of working relationships that are in place across the way. The working relationship with our client, consumer, and patient, always being mindful of the boundaries and the barriers that are necessary there so that there is no conflict of interest there. Also, we want to talk about the relationship between me, the worker, and my supervisor, me, the worker, and my colleagues, me, the worker, and the services that need to be provided. When we're looking at, again, the implementation and the assessment of our programs, we want to make sure that we, the worker, are not coming against any type of hurdles that we identify that could be hindering our clients, consumers, or patients from achieving their goals. So this is chapter, I cannot remember, I want to say it's chapter 8 in a nutshell when we talk about client empowerment. When we are looking at empowerment, again, we want to make sure that we are building our clients up, not for us to receive the accolades, but so that they can be at that place where they can say, hey, I did okay. I made it through. Now I, the client, have the tools to be successful should I experience a similar situation in the future. That is client empowerment, good people. All right, so in this week's chapter folder, there will be an assignment in regards to your echo map. There will be a case study there. And I'm also going to include in there another video. And this is just a video that's, again, simply talking about the theories of client empowerment. If you can, just go ahead and watch it. It'll probably touch on some of the information in our chapter, but also give you a little bit more information in regards to, again, looking at the process of client empowerment. All right, good people. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, you know to get a hold of me by email or call my office phone. Y'all have a great day.